I have Megan here with me. We have two OCD therapists here. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We didn't know if there was something going wrong on our ends because normally we see so many more comments by this point. No, we see people are coming in. Megan, can you see the people, like the number? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to our nighttime, our Monday through Friday webinar. So this is your opportunity to, if you have any questions about OCD, about exposure and response prevention, or about no CD in particular, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, you're welcome to get those questions in. And we'll try to go through them as much as we can here in the next 45 minutes or so. So for those of you who are new to this, you might not recognize me. My name is Jenna Overbaugh. I'm a therapist here at No CD. I also run our support group program. I do a couple other things for No CD. But I also do our Instagram lives. And recently, Meghin, Tobin, has been joining me on those lives. My phone's not going to freeze this time or overheat this time.
That was fun.
Yeah, it's nice to do this once for once actually, like on my computer. Yeah, so I have Meghin with me here, joining me for her first webinar on StreamYard. So Meghin, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, tell them about your background and what brought you to No CD.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, guys. Nice to see all of you. My name's Meghin once again. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm located in New York State. I am a full-time OCD therapist here, and I am newer to treating OCD just as of this year, but I have been in the field for many, many years. I love this population. This is like one of the best things that I have ever gotten to do. So that's why I love doing these webinars with you, Jenna, and jumping on and talking about this all the time, even on my days off and my hours off. And this isn't work for me. I really, really, really am very passionate about treating this disorder and working with those of you that I get to work with and stuff. So yeah, thanks for having me.
It's crazy that you've said that before, but it's crazy that you're new to this because you talk as though it came just very naturally to you. So
it feels very intuitive to me. Like jumping in felt like I've been doing this for a while. So something clicked. I have many people in my life who struggle with OCD. So I'm sure that has helped because it's not always something that is well known and talked about in all areas of life. So that definitely drove my passion to get involved as a clinician for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah. So let's get to it, you guys. I don't necessarily go in order, but Meghin, if you have a question, if you find a question that you really like, just let me know and I'll show it. Sure. I like this one. There's two parts. So is exposure and response prevention about A, learning to handle being uncomfortable with uncertainty about your trigger, or B, learning that nothing bad happens in the absence of doing compulsions? So let's tackle this part first, and then we can get to the second question. So I'll give my thoughts, and then Meghin, you can jump in. It's both. So there are two learning models. Yeah, there are two learning models that really explain why exposure and response prevention, or ERP, is the gold standard treatment for OCD and anxiety. And so one of those, which was always kind of the reigning model, that has the most kind of research base to it, and what most people think of when they think of exposure therapy, is the habituation model. The habituation model just basically posits that as you sit with your anxiety, you get used to it, and then it comes down naturally over time without you having to do anything about it. And so by doing exposure therapy, by introducing yourself to these triggers, you put yourself in this position where you get used to your anxiety, where it's not interpreted in your brain as being as threatening, because you're introducing yourself to it and you're just essentially getting used to it. We all habituate to things all the time. So if you guys have ever had like a good smelling candle and you burn it for a couple of days, but then a couple of days after you're like, I can't even smell that anymore. It's not that it's a bad candle necessarily. It's just that you've gotten used to it because it's so repetitive and your brain is no longer attuned to it because it's not new. It's not novel. Same thing happens when you guys get into a cold swimming pool. So you get into a cold swimming pool at first and it's really cold, but eventually without you having to do anything, you don't have to like swim around, you don't have to generate energy, you don't have to do anything. Eventually with nothing but the passing of time, you get used to it. And the same thing will happen also to your physiological responses that are associated with anxiety. It's just that we normally interrupt that process by ritualizing or avoiding or seeking reassurance, distracting, or whatever. So yes, it is about learning how to handle being uncomfortable with the uncertainty. You just get used to it. But it's also about learning that nothing necessarily bad happens. So we can't guarantee you that nothing bad will happen. That's all that uncertainty is, right? Like there's no guarantee. But the second model that accompanies the habituation model is the inhibitory learning model. And so a lot of times people will say, earthworms habituate, humans learn. I'm of the opinion that humans habituate and learn. Like I think that both of these models can have a say. And so I do think that, yes, part of the exposure process is putting yourself in these anxiety-provoking situations and opening yourself up to new learning potential, opening yourself up to new potential opportunities for learning. And you violate what we call your threat expectations. So you put yourself in these, perceived anxiety-provoking situations where you anticipate threat. And there are a couple options. Your threatening scenario could happen, but it could also not happen. It could be a good thing, and it could be a totally neutral scenario. And so you do learn by putting yourself in these anxiety-provoking situations. You learn that, one, your feared event probably it's not as probable as you think. Your feared event isn't as catastrophic as you think. If your feared event does occur, you can handle it. And if your feared event does occur, it's usually not as bad as you think it is. And so, moral of the story, you get used to your anxiety experiences, you get used to those uncomfortable sensations, and you also learn a ton. So both of those things are true. Meghin, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I love the comment you made about habituation and learning being an experience that, both come kind of hand in hand. So I love the fact that OCD learns in turn that it can't be the driver of the ship once you do start learning to be uncomfortable with the uncertainty, opening yourself up to the uncertainty, learning that something could or could not go wrong as a result of not doing the compulsions, even though the probability in a lot of those situations is that nothing catastrophic is going to happen, but really leaning into that gray space and not giving the OCD the black or white responses that it really wants. But the OCD then starts to learn in return to your learning that it can't be the one to dictate your life at the end of the day, that you're the one still behind the wheel and you get to be the one to decide what your quality of life looks like as a result.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Here's the follow-up too. Doesn't learning that nothing bad happens equal to being certain about the outcome of a situation? So I think we covered this, right? So no, we never are certain. So if I'm fearful of walking by a dog because I have this threat expectation that that dog is going to bite me, if I walk by a dog fearing that that dog might bite me, like lunge out and bite me, let's say the dog is really nice and he like sniffs me and he's really cute and he's really snuggly and he's really great. That doesn't mean that I'm never going to get bit by a dog again. It just means that that one wasn't 100% going to bite me the way that I thought 100% that dog was going to bite me. And so it doesn't mean that you can never be certain about the outcome of a situation. But I think a fallacy that people in OCD often fall for is that, if I'm uncertain about something, that means it's 50-50. And that's not true, right? Okay. Like if I'm fearful of getting in a car accident, it doesn't mean that my likelihood of that happening is 50-50. I don't know what it is. And I'm not going to spend that energy trying to figure out that hypothetical probability. It is what it is. It might happen. It might not. I don't know. Our goal is that we only want you to be as anxious as the facts warrant. And that's a very vague statement, obviously. Like, what are the facts? We want you to be able to live a life of your values. But yeah, just because you learn that nothing bad happened that time, it corrects your probability estimation. It doesn't secure certainty. So anything else about that, Meghin?
Yeah, I just, living your values is the top goal, right? And expanding, the more that we can work on expanding that space of uncertainty and learning to exist in that space, the better you're going to be able to meet your own values and goals at the end of the day. So, yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And guys, I don't necessarily go in order. So if I am past your question, it doesn't mean that I won't get to your question. I just go for whatever catches my eye.
Ooh, can we jump to one that's standing out to me?
Yeah. Tell me, can we do that? Let's do this one first and then I'll let you.
Yeah.
You can tell me which one. Are there any new treatments coming in the next 5 years? Wouldn't hold your breath. And that's simply because exposure and response prevention is more effective for OCD and anxiety than any other treatment for any other disorder. I just don't think that the efforts are going to be put on ERP or on creating something additional.
Yeah.
Because ERP is already so effective.
And we know it works and we see it work all the time. So,
yeah. So commit to, I know a lot of times people with an OCD treatment, they want to have something quick, like they're willing to do anything. I would just encourage you guys to try to commit to the hard work and do the hard work because it really does work if you work it. So Megan, what was the question that you wanted?
Actually, I can kind of piggyback a little bit on what we're talking about. If trauma and OCD can be linked, is ERP still gold standard for treatment for both? So, I mean, I'll kind of put my 2 cents in there, but really piggybacking from what we just said, that ERP is the gold standard of treatment for OCD. Trauma is something that comes along with mental health disorders just in general, and it can be something that triggers somebody's OCD, or somebody who has OCD has a history of trauma. But if the OCD is the presenting issue, then ERP is a great path to take. But what are your thoughts on that, Jenna?
Yeah. So trauma, the gold standard treatment for trauma is, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's prolonged exposure therapy.
Yep.
And it's a little bit more favorable to do EMDR than it is for OCD. So EMDR is not an evidence-based treatment or recommendation for OCD. But guys, the meat and potatoes of EMDR is exposure therapy. So there's a really funny meme, and I'll try to link it. But a lot of times people out there they want to know about EMDR. It's basically ERP, except you look at a moving target. And so, I mean, it's a little bit more palatable, I hear, for people to do EMDR because it's like I have to relive these experiences, which again is very exposure based. But I get to look at this moving target or this moving finger or lights or something. So it's a little bit more palatable, I guess, for people who are really, really fearful of that hardcore exposure therapy. But the meat and potatoes of that is exposure therapy. So I will try to find that meme because it's essentially they're one and the same. It's just one is a little bit dressed up. One is ERP is just, or EMDR is just a little bit more, it has some bells and whistles. It's not, but it's ERP. It's ERP.
Right. And the takeaway is facing the fears, really, really addressing those core fears head on instead of avoiding or running away from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I have some resources here, but Megan, why don't you take this one quick and let me know, what do you think? Can you do ERP on your own if someone doesn't have access to therapy, or if they're in between sessions, or if they can't afford therapy? What do you think?
Yeah, I think a big part of, what we do as educators in our role as clinicians is teaching people to use these skills on their own. And depending on where you're at and how your symptoms are presenting, it's really great to have that support, but you can absolutely use these skills on your own. That is the purpose of this treatment, is to be able to learn those skills and then apply them for yourself throughout the rest of your life as you manage your symptoms or need to. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's preferable to do these things on with like the guidance of a therapist, but there are two really great courses that I would recommend. I would recommend ERP School by Kimberly Quinlan. She's great, and she does a really great job and kind of educating you about, you know, the ins and outs of exposure and response prevention and how to do these skills on your own. So that's Kimberly Quinlan. It's at erpschool.com, I believe. And then Nathan Peterson. He's been on one of our webinars before with me. He has an awesome YouTube channel. He's at OCD and Anxiety Online. .com, I believe, and he also has a really thorough OCD and exposure and response prevention course that you can take yourself through. He has like modules, like previews of each of his modules too, so you can kind of see what you're gonna get, what you're gonna get yourself into. And related to that, I think he also just opened up a body-focused repetitive behaviors self-guided course. So if you're also struggling with like skin picking or hair pulling or any other body-focused repetitive behavior, that's also a self-guided course that he offers. So Nathan Peterson, he's absolutely wonderful. OCD and Anxiety Online.
That's really awesome. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's absolutely incredible. And his YouTube channel is full of really, really awesome resources. Kimberly Quinlan, if you look up her podcast, it's called Your Anxiety Toolkit, I think it's called. So yeah, lots of really good resources from both of those individuals. They're really, really good at what they do. Meghin, this always throws me for a loop. So depersonalization / derealization. What do you think?
So I have come across this a handful of times, a lot more recently, actually. I try to tackle it the same way I do with any other presentation of OCD, right? That fear of separating from oneself, the fear of losing touch with reality, the fear of what if ... I end up losing touch with the reality, losing my mind, ending up in a psychiatric hospital, wherever those what if questions can go with, and kind of facing what that could or could not look like, or the fact that that could or could not happen. And not getting thrown off. And I know me and you have talked about this many times in these lives now, but not getting thrown off by that costume that the OCD is going to wear, and not letting the intensity of that fear then drive you to try to fix it in that moment, but trying to more so lean in and just go for the ride with that. Much easier said than done, obviously, and that's why it is recommended to have support with a clinician going through this kind of treatment, but not getting fooled by the mask that OCD is going to wear and try to convince you that it is something more valuable than other presentations of your symptoms, or comparing to somebody else's presentation of OCD versus existential OCD and some of the symptoms that come along with it. It is OCD's trick and way of trying to get you to suck in and just do compulsions around it, which we know is not helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, there was a really good quote about this the other day that I saw on Instagram. I think it was from Drew Linslada, the.anxious.truth, who also has a really great podcast and a ton of awesome resources. He wrote a post about how anxiety is one of the weirdest wars ever. You only win when you stop fighting. And I think depersonalization and derealization is like that. That's perfect for that. So when you guys are experiencing these symptoms, or really any type of symptom that's more mimicky of panic, like whatever that means for you, it sounds totally counterintuitive. It sounds totally backwards. But what we would want you to do is to stop fighting that. So I think when we start to feel those sensations that are affiliated with panic for us, they can feel very dangerous and very threatening. But really, by interpreting them as being threatening and being dangerous, we kind of psych ourselves up to experience more of those physiological responses, and we just make ourselves more anxious in turn. So really, like he said, it's a weird war because you only win when you stop fighting. There's a really good metaphor. I forget who came up with it, but it's essentially like when you start to feel these sensations, when you start to feel panic, it's kind of like a car without brakes. And if what you want to do is slow down the car, right? Like the car is going really fast. It doesn't have the brakes are out. you guys are panicking, you're having depersonalization, you're having derealization, and you want to slow it down. What you're all trying to do to slow down the car is you're like trying to hit the brakes, but what you're doing is actually hitting the gas pedal. But really what we need to do is just let go, keep our feet off of the brakes, keep our feet off of the wheel, and let the car slow down naturally. Yep. So I know that little metaphor like really helps me when I'm starting to feel anxious too, like realizing like I really want to hit the brakes right now. All I'm going to be doing is accidentally hitting the gas pedal. What I truly need to do is just allow those sensations to happen. All right. Lots of good questions.
Yeah, seriously.
This will be a good one. We won't give reassurance here, but we can talk about it because I'm sure lots of people feel that like can relate to this. So Meghin, what do you think?
The thoughts in my head really what I want, or is it the OCD? So I think we probably hear this every day. And you know, I don't want to provide any reassurance there, but that is one of those what if kinds of thinking questions where the OCD is trying to grip you in once again and get you to pay attention to it, get you to doubt yourself, get you to do something to figure that out in that moment. And what we want to do is kind of lean in with the uncertainty with that. And once again, exist in that gray space that's in between and not engaging with those thoughts, riding that anxiety out around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So OCD, remember, it's the doubt disorder, right? So you can be 99.999% sure that this thought is not what you want and that this is the OCD, but that's just never going to be enough for the OCD, right? Like you're going to want to be 100% sure that this isn't a thought that you want. You're going to want more certainty, more certainty, more certainty. And so just know that it's never going to be enough, right? And so the more that you try to ritualize through that, the more that you try to become certain, the more that you try to become 100%, the less certain and less confident you'll actually be. And so really we would just encourage you to try to resist ritualizing around that, resist trying to figure out 100%, try to be okay with that less than 100% because it's never going to be enough for the OCD. It was never going to be enough. It will never be enough. So we're just going to try to let that be there. And it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel maybe irresponsible. It's going to feel, it's going to feel guilty. It's going to feel like so many different things, but just try to not answer those questions as much as possible. All right. You guys always give each other such good feedback during the lives too. It's really, really nice. Sleep is coming up a lot. A lot of people are asking about sleep and like waking up and feeling super anxious. So that might be something that we can help people with right now. So how can you tackle OCD thoughts before sleep? For example, if it keeps you up for hours. So regardless of the time, right? Like whether it's early in the morning, whether it's in the afternoon, after lunch, before dinner, before bed, we want to try to tackle these things the same exact way, right? So it's always going to be, sitting with that uncertainty. What are the rituals that I need to be resisting doing right now? And how do I do that? How do I not answer those questions that OCD has for me? I do think that you're already one step ahead of the game, Nicole. So I do think that you are already aware that this is a pattern for your OCD. Like, yep, this is a pattern before I go to bed, which by the way is very common, right? So it's an unstructured time. People with OCD and anxiety tend to struggle with unstructured time because it's like, well, my brain's not busy. I'm not actively like engaged. I'm not distracted. So what else does my brain want to do but go down these rabbit holes of rumination and trying to figure out all these ridiculous questions that my OCD has. So just know that that's very common. These unstructured times are difficult for people. And so I would just know, I would go into your bedtime routine, like as you're getting ready, as you're like closing down your work computer or as you put kids to bed or whatever it is that your nighttime routine is, like as you get ready for it, I would actively like remind yourself, okay, My goal is to go all night and like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do this ritual and I'm not going to do this ritual. I'm going to sit with the uncertainty of this thing for as long as I can. And I'm just going to, if it were me, like I would be watching an episode of The Office with my husband. Like those thoughts can either be there or they cannot be there, but I'm not going to answer those questions. I'm just going to watch this episode of The Office with my husband as though I never had those thoughts, right? So being okay with whatever thoughts or intrusive experiences you're having, trying to be okay with whatever doubts you're having, and do what you would do anyway if you didn't have those thoughts, right? Like what would you be doing before you had those thoughts? What would you be doing if you didn't have OCD? Or if OCD wasn't part of the equation? And then do those things. And so I'm not saying that it's not going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel those urges to try to figure something out or ruminate or whatever, but just go into that situation. Like as you're brushing your teeth, yep, I'm not answering that question. I'm treating that like an obsession. I'm not answering that question. And also like maintaining decent hygiene. Like I'm not an expert in that as much as I am other things, but you know, I think it's healthy to make sure that you're not, you know, eating 3 bowls of cereal before bed like I do. Like probably good to not like be on your phone right up until bed. If there are certain things that really contribute to you ritualizing more, especially late at night, like your phone, if you're like an avid Googler and you want to research everything, maybe you just need to put your phone, like have it across the room so that's just less tempting for you to have it. So those are some of my examples. What do you think, Meghin?
Like caffeine too, I'd stay away from late at night. Making sure you're moving enough throughout the day so that way your body's a little bit more tired. But yeah, like entering the nighttime routine with the attitude of like, all right, OCD, bring it on, because I know that you're going to show up and I'm just going to let you do your thing, but I'm also going to do my thing at the same time. Like Jenna said, you know, I'm going to watch that show with my significant other. I'm going to read that book I wanted to read. I'm going to go for that walk with my dog, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, that you are going to prioritize what you would normally do, whether those thoughts or those feelings or sensations are existing or not. They can be there. Try not to resist them. Try not to push them away. Try not to do anything about them. Just let them kind of dance around as if they're background noise while you are still the one driving the wheel, or the car, I should say.
This makes me so happy. This is crazy because every problem I've been having with OCD, you guys have answered. I feel understood, and I'm so grateful I'm not alone.
That's awesome.
Scott, we've got your back. We've got your back.
Yep.
And unfortunately, this is for better or for worse, our Scott. It's not because you just got lucky, and it's not because Meghin and I know what we're talking about. It's just because this is OCD, and it is so wildly predictable.
Yep.
It's so wildly predictable. Like, the reason why this is so helpful for so many of you guys is because OCD is so predictable. And the cool thing is, I usually say this during webinars, but like if we're talking about contamination, it's still applicable to you even if you deal with sexual intrusive thoughts, right? Like it doesn't matter the content, it still applies exactly the same way. Awesome. So many good questions. There was one about self-compassion, which I
love that.
Really, really good question.
It's a good thing to talk about too.
Yes. How do you balance not giving into your compulsions, but also giving self-compassion, which is a good thing. We want you guys to be compassionate with yourselves with this whole process. So I think it's a very subtle line. Like it can be a very like kind of fine line sometimes. So I understand the confusion with it. Like where does one stop and where does one begin? I think of it like, I don't want you guys to reassure yourselves about your OCD content, right? Like I don't want you guys to be reassuring yourself like it's fine, it's not that big of a deal, you're not going to get sick, or you don't actually want those thoughts, you're fine, you're a good person. That's different to me than you're working so hard right now. Yep. You are kicking butt. You are doing hard things. That to me is it's just different. One is about your efforts. One, which is great. Like give yourself credit for your efforts. This is really hard stuff. You guys are intentionally facing your fears every single day. You're intentionally making yourself feel like crap every single day to get better. And so you have to be giving yourselves compassion and credit and be your own kind of like best little cheerleaders about that, in order to kind of sustain the mental capacity that it's going to take for the long haul. But at the same time, like, you just want to make sure that you're not giving yourself reassurance about the content of your OCD, which is different. So, you know, you want to give yourself encouragement, but you don't want to give reassurance. And it is a fine line. So, Meghin, while I gather my thoughts a little bit, what else? What other?
I would also say under the self-compassion piece is, you know, conversations that we have all the time too in sessions and whatnot. Or, you know, I hear people say like, well, I gave into that compulsion and now this means X, Y, Z about me. We need to not focus on being perfect, because that's exactly what the OCD is trying to get us to do in the first place. So if something happens, we let it go. We move forward. We try hard again the next time it comes up. I think self-judgment and being really self-critical, it's not serving any purpose, just like doing the compulsions aren't serving any purpose for you, or beating yourself up for things. You know, we move forward and we try again, trying to stay more in that present moment rather than giving ourselves a hard time for things that we weren't perfect at or we made a mistake with, or however we want to label that. So I think that's a big piece of that self-compassion, is being able to gracefully move forward if we gave into that compulsion, and we make the commitment that the next time that situation arises or that opportunity comes up for us to not do the compulsion, that we make the commitment again and we try again.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I think of it too. Like, I run a lot of half marathons. If I was constantly beating myself up the entire time that I was running that 13 miles, I would never want to run another half marathon ever again. And I'm not saying that during that 13 miles, I don't do that every once in a while, because it's just natural and it's the human brain, and this is a difficult situation and all those things. But you have to ask yourselves, you guys have to, like, how can I maintain a sustainable mindset for the long haul? Like, this is the long haul. Like, there's no deadline here. There's no timeline. It's not like in 6 weeks I'm done with this and I don't have to do it anymore. Like, you guys are in it for the long haul. And so it's really important to just try what you can do to try to make it like a sustainable mindset for you guys. And I think self-compassion is a really big, important part of that. Awesome. Oh, this is a really good one too. What if I don't actually know what my compulsions are, or they're so well hidden because I've grown up doing them?
Yep.
What do you think, Meghin?
Well, that's exactly what happens, right? Is this becomes so automatic that we are doing things, thinking things, doing actions, feeding into thoughts, and we don't even realize that we're doing it at the end of the day. So yeah, gaining that mindfulness around how your OCD plays a role in your life is definitely a skill in and of itself to adapt. I always like to kind of self-reflect and say, like, what purpose is this serving, or why am I doing this right now? If the answer is, well, I'm trying to calm myself down, or I'm trying to hide from this feeling, or I'm trying to run from this scary thing that I'm experiencing, then you can kind of start to learn, like, oh, I think my OCD's here. I think it's playing a role in this moment, and I'm giving into some sort of a compulsion because I'm trying to make myself feel better. And I know that's been a helpful tool for many, to try to figure out when you're doing those compulsions or not. But yeah, that's such a common experience, because that OCD cycle and loop that we get caught in of having the obsessive or intrusive thought and then having the anxiety and then immediately reacting to try to fix or resolve or whatever around it. It is automatic, especially when you've been doing it for so long. So great comment question there.
And this is why, like, if you're doing therapy, whether it's with no OCD or elsewhere, this is why, like, when you first do your assessments or like you first go to therapy, you might think that you're like this level of debilitated by your OCD, but actually the next time that you do your assessments, maybe like 2 weeks into treatment or like 4 weeks into treatment or whatever, you might feel better. You might feel like you're improving, but it's really common to see your assessment scores getting worse. So and that's not indicative that you guys are necessarily getting worse. It's just indicative that your insight is improving. And so as you work with a therapist, especially a well-trained exposure and response provider, they'll be able to kind of tell you things and point things out to you that you weren't really aware that you were doing that was ritualistic. And so you're kind of just on autopilot living your life with these behaviors because you didn't know that that was obsessive and compulsive. You didn't know that that was a thing. And so that's one of the really great things about working with a therapist is that they can point those things out to you that you were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I was doing that. And so then you can kind of start to just address it as far as ERP goes. But it's totally common, very normal for OCD to be having you do things that you're not even aware of. But ERP will definitely, whether it's a really good self-guided course that I told you guys about earlier, or if it's with the help of a therapist, we'll be able to help you guys identify like what are some rituals that you might have been doing that are very small and subtle. And just be asking yourself, like, why am I doing that? What's the function of that behavior?
Yep.
What's the function of that behavior? And if you guys can be asking yourself that and just be like more of a detective, like kind of be more of a sleuth about why you're doing the things that you're doing. Even if it's just like certain questions that you're asking your spouse or certain things that you're doing when you're like, just ask yourself, why am I doing that? What's the function of that behavior? And if the function of that behavior is to lower your anxiety that you experience as the result of an obsession, it's probably compulsive. So whether it's hand washing, whether it's compulsively researching on Google, or whether it's meditating, or whether it's listening to a particular song, or whether it's cleaning your house, like if you're doing it with the intention of reducing your anxiety that you experience as the result of an obsession, it's likely a compulsive behavior. And so when you ask yourself the question of, well, why am I doing that? If the answer is to ease my anxiety, it's probably not helpful. It's probably contradictory to your ERP treatment.
Yep.
Because what we want you to do is do nothing. We want you to do nothing, which is a stupidly simple concept, but also wildly frustrating.
Yes.
13.1 miles. That's right. That 0.1 is very important, JH. Very important, that 0.1. If you've ever run a half marathon before, you know that 0.1 is extremely important. You don't leave out the 0.1. They don't leave out the 0.1. Oh my goodness. Love this question too, you guys. Such good questions today.
Oh my God. These are all awesome. Yeah.
They're all really great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What are some clues that your exposures are becoming compulsions? First of all, let's back up. Like piggybacking off of what I just said, right? Anything can become compulsive. So if you're doing exposures, I got to do more exposures. I got to do more exposures because I'm so anxious that I'm going to relapse. If I don't do these exposures, something bad is going to happen. Even your exposures, you guys, can become compulsive, right? So it's really important that you're asking yourself, why am I doing that? Why am I needing to go and do my exposures right now? Why am I going to do my exposures? Why do I need to go and do 5 more extra trials of my exposures? Because I don't want my therapist to be mad at me. Well, that might be compulsive. Yeah, so exposures can become compulsive. What do you think? I'm going to gather my thoughts really quickly.
Well, the OCD, I was going to say before too, tries to get sneaky when you're really in the process and tries to get you to do sometimes some new compulsions that you're not really used to, or things that you've done before in the past, because it tries to kind of sneak back in and get you to pay attention to it. So that's a way where I do often see the exposures then becoming compulsions, because we've tackled the primary subtype or symptoms, and now the OCD is just vying for your attention and turns something that was once a functional treatment now into a new compulsion. So yes, same reflection question like Jenna had reiterated. why am I doing this? Am I doing this right now to make myself feel better, to make myself feel calmer? If the answer to that could even potentially be a yes, then you're going to err on the side of caution and just assume that you're probably engaging in some sort of compulsion. And then instead, you're going to accept the uncertainty around those thoughts and feelings and just lean into that a little bit more.
I think it usually accompanies some type of fear, like that I'm going to relapse, or that I'm going to lose control, that I'm going to like upset my therapist or something like that. Like usually it's about like fear of relapsing or fear of never getting better. And it's like, then those individuals with those thoughts will then use exposures as a, like, I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more.
Right.
The dead giveaway to me, you guys, is for when exposures are becoming compulsions, or really when anything is becoming compulsive, is urgency. The sense of urgency. Like, I have to do it now. I have to do it now. I have to do it now. I have to do it. I need more. And so, you know, I play around with it, right? Like, try to be more flexible with it. If you typically do like 15 exposure trials in one day, maybe one day you do 12 and see how that makes you feel. Does it make you feel anxious because you're afraid that you're going to like lose some of your progress? Does it make you feel like you're going to lose those mental muscles? Does it make you feel like you're going to get in trouble with your therapist? You're going to relapse, whatever. Like, just play around with it. And furthermore, like, you can lean into that uncertainty by like, yep, I'm a total delinquent when it comes to ERP. I'm a totally delinquent. I totally suck. Bring it on. Bring it on. I'm just the worst. And someone has a really good follow-up to this. What if you're just really motivated to get better? I think that's fine. That's great. You're going to have to be really motivated in order to do this. But you also have to be, do the work. Also be willing to know that you could do all the work. You could do all the exposures. You could do all the things. You could listen to all the webinars. You could do all of the things, and you could still not get better.
Yep.
So as long as like you can live with that and be flexible about it, right? Like, you can be motivated to get better, but let's say that you have a friend in town. Like, maybe the day, like it's just one of those days where life gets really busy and you're not able to like go out of your way and actively do your assigned exposures as much. Like, can you be more flexible about that? It's all about being flexible too. Like finding a way that ERP can work for you in your lifestyle, because it is for the long haul. Like, it's not over on December 3rd. Like, I just got to do this until December 3rd and then it's over. Like, this is your life now. Like, this is a new lifestyle. And the more that you can embrace it as an attitude shift and a lifestyle, the better off you're going to be. And so it's great to be really motivated to get better. But when you start to have so much anxiety about getting better and you're putting so much pressure on yourself to get better, and there's so much anxiety about getting better, you're going to actually probably start to have lower performance in your area of whatever, like exposures. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson curve. We want you to have moderate levels of anxiety about treatment. That's associated with the highest levels of performance. When you start to have too high of levels of anxiety about your performance, oh my gosh, am I going to get better? I'm not just motivated anymore. I'm anxious about getting better, right? Like, there's a difference. That's when it becomes not so great, when you start to feel like a sense of urgency. All right. We have time for maybe one more. You have time for one more? You pick it.
Yeah. I pick it. Okay. Let's see.
Just really quickly, while Megan is looking for the last question, Nicole is asking, are there things you can do for yourself while struggling with OCD and no current access to therapy? So we do offer free support groups. So if you go to www.nocd.com/support-groups, you'll access all of our free support groups. You do not need to be in NoCD therapy or in therapy at all in general in order to participate. All of the therapy groups, they're offered every day of the week. We're also going to be opening up a Saturday group starting on the 31st. So that's this Saturday. So if you go to that page, you can also access it by going and downloading our free NoCD app. It's literally, if you just open up the NoCD app, let me grab it here. It's literally on the first page, and it's the blue icon that says introducing online. It's always so bright. Introducing online support groups. It looks like that. I can't hold it straight up. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. Yeah. But it looks like that. And you'll be able to sign up and see all of our support groups. They're all led by an OCD therapist. They're all peer-based. We have, you know, support groups for young adults. We have a really cool creativity for OCD group now. You guys are like making t-shirts and songs, and it's just really, really cool. So anything for kids on OCD. We do have a young adults group. We have a students with OCD group. We have resources for parents. We also do see kids. I think Meghin is young as 6, right?
Yep.
So I believe as young as 6, we can see kiddos who have OCD. So, and we're always trying to like increase the conversation around how to make it more child friendly, how to make it more kid friendly. So that is something to stay on the lookout for. Meghin, what was the last question? What's the last question we're going to get to?
All right. Last question. How do you balance distracting yourself to prevent ruminating whilst trying not to engage in avoidance?
I love this question. I'll let you go for it, but
so we could talk a little bit about distraction in and of itself. You know, I explain it as there's bad distraction and then there's good distraction for OCD. The bad distraction is just like what I think you're probably getting at in this question is I'm running from something. I'm doing something to get away from the feelings that I'm having. I'm doing something to distract myself or avoid the fear that I'm experiencing, the anxiety that I'm experiencing, the distress that I'm experiencing. So same rule applies, is kind of checking in with yourself. Am I doing this right now to get away? Or am I doing this right now because I'm making the commitment to not engage in the compulsion, and this is more of a priority for me or for my attention in this moment? And I'm letting those feelings still be there, and I'm letting those thoughts still be there. I'm not running from them. It is a very slippery slope, though, and that's why I think the support, especially if you're engaging in ERP for the first time and trying to learn some of these skills, it's super helpful to have somebody check in with you and help you fine tune that practice, because it is hard sometimes to determine, am I doing this because I'm avoiding, or am I doing this because this is the healthier option right now? But yeah, Jenna, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so what I would just reinforce there is I think there's good distraction, and then there's bad distraction. So I think bad distraction is, oh my gosh, I don't want to think about this intrusive thought. Oh my gosh, I don't want to think about this. I have to go over here and do this instead. Instead being the operative experience there. Good distraction, I wouldn't even call distraction. I would just say it's just getting on with your life. Like just continuing with your daily, regularly scheduled programming as though you didn't have that intrusive experience in the first place. And having the attitude of like, that intrusive experience can either be there or it cannot be there. It's welcome to come along with me. I'm still going to go and do whatever it was that I was going to do anyway, right? That to me isn't distraction. It's more so like, I'm moving on with my day now.
Yep. Prioritizing your attention to the thing that you're already doing or whatever it is.
And you're not like, stop thinking about that, stop thinking about that, stop thinking about that. It's like, no, I'm just going to move on with my day. I'm not giving that the attention that it wants. I'm treating that like an obsession. I'm going to move on with my day now. And leaving those things unanswered, like unattended to. They don't have responses. You're not engaging with them. You're just moving on with your day. And so, yeah, so that's why I say like distraction in quotations, because I don't think of it as like, I'm going to do this instead. Like that to me is a distraction, and that's not good. The reason why distraction is not good is because it interrupts that habituation process like we've talked about. Consciously or not, it teaches you guys that I can't accept the presence of these thoughts. I can't accept the presence of this intrusive experience. Thank goodness you distracted yourself, Nicole, because or whoever asked the question. Thank goodness you distracted yourself, Meghin, because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to handle it.
Right.
No, you could have handled it. Just never gave yourself the opportunity to do it, right? And you also don't want your OCD to now latch onto that And now you constantly have to distract yourself. You constantly have to be busy because we're not always going to be able to be busy. You're going to have to deal with unstructured time, like getting ready for bed, showering, driving. There are going to be times where you don't have those distractions. And again, like consciously or not, by distracting yourself from these intrusive experiences, you engage with the OCD by basically saying like that this is threatening. Your brain is essentially like, well, Meghin must find this thought to be upsetting because she's distracting herself from it. So I better protect myself from that thought next time. So you're reinforcing the concept that it's threatening versus just allowing it to be there. So, yeah. But feel free, guys. Like you got to continue with your day, right? Like you can bring that thought with you. You can, like I said, continue to lean into that uncertainty. I am probably going to give into my intrusive thoughts today. Yep, that's me. That's me. That definitely sounds like something that I would do. That definitely sounds like I would just grab this knife and I would just go after my whole entire family. Yep, that sounds like something that I would do. And I'm going to go out to eat with them anyway. And I'm going to order a steak with this big knife. Right? Like do the things that if I could boil down ERP to any like one statement or one effort, it would be okay with your experiences and do what you wanted to do anyway. Just do what you wanted to do anyway. Like had you not had that intrusive experience. But I know it's so much easier said than done for sure. So much easier said than done. 100%.
Yep.
All right, guys. Any last thoughts? Any last words of hope before we sign off for the end of the evening? You guys had awesome questions today.
Yeah.
This is really cool. This
great
is
really great comments. Yeah. Thank you guys for everything.
Yeah.
Discussion tonight.
So Meghin, thank you again so much for being here. I love duetting with you.
I know, same.
Yeah. So guys, well, I'm sure we'll have Meghin back at some point. But if you want more of us, you can find us on Instagram. We go live every other Sunday. So we go live every other Sunday. And those are all recorded and saved on our Instagram page. So at Treat My OCD on Instagram, if you go to our IGTV little button, you'll be able to see some of our past lives, including one where my phone overheated. And I was holding my phone next to my air conditioner. It was embarrassing, but we made it. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Dr. McGrath will be here tomorrow. He has a guest with him, so that'll be really cool. And then we have Emily Feldman here on Thursday. She was with me last week with Jackie. So she's an OCD advocate, and she'll be here on Thursday. And then I'll be back on Monday of next week with the two lovely ladies from Hard Quirk. So I'll be back on Monday with them. And we have a ton of awesome guests coming. So Meghin, thank you so much. I love that you just like caught on to this so easily. Like you're a freaking natural. I love you.
Thanks. Love you too. Thanks for having me.
You guys are awesome. I'll see you guys in a little bit. And as always, I wish you guys the best of luck in your recovery.
Yep. Have a great night, everyone.